What's up, guys? This is Nick at Stridewise.com, and I'm here in Utah, in Salt Lake City, with the wonderful Weston Kay from Anvil.
Glad you're here.
Yeah, I'm glad you allowed me to come in. I invaded his workshop. He actually has a job here to do. He sells fine leather goods, and I'm just taking up all this time making him do videos with me. Yeah,
it's a good time.
All right, thank you. Thank you for putting up with it. We wanted to do a video because we both know quite a lot about boots and have quite a lot of videos about boots, and make absolutely certain you subscribe to Weston's channel, by the way. It's in the description below. About how boots should fit. The ultimate guide to how boots should fit. And this is especially important because these days, the majority of people do their boot buying online.
Right.
And it can be an absolute nightmare for various reasons, right? Because I mean, for starters, no one wants to go, down to the post office and have to return a pair of boots over and over and over again. And also, boot companies have this habit of having sizes that do not correlate to your actual foot size ever, right? So just about every shoe, so this is Parkhurst, this is Red Wing, this is Dana. I'm not sure if Dana's quite the same. Most boot companies, they'll be at least a half size down from your true size and probably a whole size down from your sneaker size, but sometimes a size and a half down from your sneaker size. So the whole thing's a nightmare for people. And there are also health consequences to the wrong boot size, right?
Yeah.
So there's if it's too small, that can compress the front of your foot, and that can cause hammer toes and bunions and that sort of stuff.
Yeah, I feel like we've all seen those photos of the old photos of old people where they wear their shoes and their toes are all squished up into the shape of a shoe.
Yeah, my grandma had that. Yeah. and I actually, for the article for this video, I actually talked to a foot surgeon who told me all this stuff. If it's too big, then your foot won't bend at the right spot where the boot is meant to break. What's it called? The foot break.
As far as I know.
Yeah. And that can cause inflammation and plantar fasciitis and all this other kind of stuff. So anyway, you gotta get the fit right. So Weston and I, even though I've been doing most of the talking, we're gonna be doing the five things you wanna look at when you are figuring out how your boot should fit. And it's oftentimes different to sneakers and everything.
Definitely.
All right,
especially
okay.
boots.
Yes, all right, so let's go.
The first one is the flex point in the boot. This is important because if you have the flex point too far backwards or too far forwards, the boot isn't built to flex any other point than the ball of your foot. So if you're too far back, the boot's too big, you're gonna be flexing this upper part where the stitching is, and it's gonna start digging into your foot. It's not gonna fit you correctly where the arch is. It's gonna maybe cause a little bit of heel slip. If you're too far forward, you're gonna have your toes squished up in the front, and it's gonna lead to some premature wearing on the sides of the boot where your toes are bulging out the side of the leather. So a good way to just generally find where that flex point should be, the widest part of the boot should be where the ball of your foot is, where your toes start to flex. If the ball of your foot is too far back, it's gonna be flexing the wrong spot. If it's too far forward, it's gonna be flexing the wrong spot.
Because for instance, when I was going back and forth between my old and indies, I went true to size. A lot of people don't, and I was in the store for a long time, just like a $600 shoe almost. I couldn't figure out what to do, and then I remembered this article that I wrote, which is in the description below, and I made sure it was breaking in the right spot, and everything else everything else follows from that. That was the most important thing to remember. The other stuff is important, but if I can't quite decide, I start with where's the shoe break, and then I keep going to the second most important bit. So the second most important thing you want to talk about is the heel when it comes to the fit of your boot. And this is another I don't know if controversial is the right word, but there's a lot of people always wonder, is it okay to have some heel slip with your boot? And especially with boots, because they've got this long shaft, that can be the number one concern for a lot of people. But it's not that big a deal if you have some heel slippage when you get a new pair of boots and you're trying it on. A quarter inch or so, maybe even half an inch, quarter inch or so, it's okay. And that's because honestly, as the boot breaks in, the heel slippage will reduce and probably disappear altogether.
Yeah. And it also depends on what the heel counter material, this stiffener in the heel, is made out of, because some heel counters break in super fast within the first few times of wearing them, and that heel slip's gonna disappear. Other boots, like some heavy duty work boots, they have a really heavy, solid piece of leather counter that's gonna take you 20 miles to even begin to break in.
Yeah.
And so it kind of, no matter, some people are never gonna have any heel slip in particular boots, but for putting on a brand new pair of boots for the first time, you're always gonna have just a little bit of heel slip. You just don't want your heel to be slipping up and down all over inside the boot to where you're gonna be rubbing your heel raw and give yourself blisters.
With online boots, that means there's the flesh on the inside of it is already kind of rough and nappy.
Yeah.
And that will help to, you're less likely to get a heel slippage in the beginning, but even if you get a little bit of it, it's gonna break in a little bit more faster and secure the foot more readily. That's in contrasted to a lined boot like this one, that one, it'll take a little bit longer to break into the heel and to reduce slippage.
Yeah.
But no matter what, the beauty of a leather boot is that it conforms to the shape of your foot. So don't stress as much about the heel slip as you probably are and as I used to before I got into boots, because the boot, it'll form to the shape of your foot.
Well, if you look at I guess I'll show it to the camera. If you look at a brand new pair versus the pair that's used, you can see that it's not necessarily the heel counter that's broken in, but this area above the back, or the backstay itself, that's conformed to the way your heel dips in. See that difference? That's really what prevents the heel slip for future, or for moving forward with the boot once it's broken in, because the counter doesn't move a whole lot. It's just more getting this broken in, and as you tie that slowly closes around your ankle, versus a brand new boot, it's usually straight up and down, and that's why you're getting some heel slip.
But the thing is, you should walk around in the boots for a while, and if after a considerable amount of time you're still getting a bit of heel slippage and that bothers you, there are plenty of products out there like heel snugs that you can just buy and like put on the inside of your boot, and that'll like help to remedy the issue. So a bit of heel slippage isn't as big a deal as you might think.
So for the third thing to consider is the width of the shoe or the boot, the toe box area, and it's probably more important than the length of the boot.
Yeah, because like the length of the boot, if everything else feels great, but you got some extra room at the end of the toe, I get people email me all the time like, everything's great, but like I feel like there's like too much room at the end of the boot. That doesn't really matter. Not really. Like too much room doesn't matter, so long as the boot is still moving with your foot. But the width is the width can be a bigger deal, especially because like, if there's like a lot of compression around that area of the foot, be it the toes or the ball of the foot, that can cause like inflammation and like some, that it can lead to issues down the road. The thing is that like a lot of guys, they'll buy boots and they'll be uncomfortable when they try them on, and they'll just buy them with the expectation that they'll stretch. But that's not a great idea.
Yeah, because to me, if anyone was going to ask me, like, what do I do, or how do I decide on the width of a boot? Is it okay if it's uncomfortable? I would usually say, find a pair of boots that's comfortable from day one and don't expect it to stretch, because some boots will stretch, some boots will form better to your foot, but overall, they're not going to stretch significantly and increase the comfortability more than a small fraction.
Yeah, like a millimeter, maybe they'll stretch. So like, if you try on a pair of boots and they are tight width-wise to the point of discomfort, don't buy them with the expectation that they'll stretch. If you try them on and there's like a little bit, I don't even know if pressure is the right word, but if you can feel the boot on the side but it's not uncomfortable, you can be like fairly comfortable stretch. But like there's a difference between that and it being like too tight and uncomfortable, and I wouldn't wear this unless it's stretched, because that's like a bet you probably don't really want to make.
And the other thing to consider is, what are you doing in the boots? Because if you're going to be standing in the boots on hard concrete all day, you might not want any pressure on the side of your toes, just squishing your toes up. But if you're buying a boot for a night out with your lady, or a night out with your boys, you want to look nice, you might be okay with just a little bit of toe squish, because you're prioritizing form over function.
Yeah, definitely.
It's function over form.
Yeah, which is a totally fine thing to do. I think so. Things to remember when trying on the pair of boots. One is that different companies have different widths, right? So there are the spectrum of widths with boots. If you don't know, it's like you go as far down as A, B, C, D, E, double E, triple E. But normally you just get D and sometimes E's, right? So D is considered a normal width, and then E and double E is considered wide. But the thing is, the vast majority of boots out there, they're D widths, right? But like this Iron Ranger, for instance, this is like quite wide, and then there's I've got like a Taft Jack boot, which calls itself a D width, but it squishes my toes a bit. And like that's fine, but my point is that you want to talk to the company about their last, like the way they make the shape of their own boots, because different companies that have a D width, they'll call themselves a D, but they'll still be different widths, if that makes sense.
Even if it does stretch to some degree, it's not necessarily widening the boot itself, because the platform of the boot, the sole and the midsole, isn't widening, it's the upper. And so even if it does widen, you might end up standing on the welt all day, which is going to be wildly uncomfortable. Yeah.
Oh, and also, when you're trying the boots, chat to the company about what their last is actually like, and also make sure that you try to do it at the end of the day. That's something a lot of people don't know, because the length of your foot doesn't change throughout the day, but the width actually does. So toward the end of the day, your feet have like a swollen a little bit, not in a healthy way, but there's a small blood down there and stuff. So you want to make sure, when you're trying the boots, you do it at the end of the day, and bring some thick socks as well, because most boots are designed to be worn with thick socks. All right, the fourth thing you want to think about is the arch, which is very tricky with boots because like different boots have different like levels of arch support, and sometimes they've got like a lot of arch support because they've got like a decent shank in there. Other times it's because they've like just sort of built it up themselves, and it's quite hard to determine how great the arch support is going to be over time because like you sink into the cork and the leather. So the real question is like, how important is it for you to have proper arch support? Because feet vary between different people.
And I think for a lot of people, I would say for the majority of people, it doesn't matter as much unless you have like some sort of special need for arch support or the lack thereof. You know, if you have really, really flat feet and you get in something that has high arch support, it might cause you tons of pain and you might not ever be able to wear the boots because a lot like the width, it's only going to compress a certain amount throughout the lifetime of the boot. You know, you're never going to compress 5 layers of leather like in a handmade Pacific Northwest boot. It's never going to flatten to a centimeter.
Yeah.
And so I would say more than anything, it's important to just get something that's somewhat comfortable to begin with, just like with the width, and make sure it fits you right.
Yeah, like generally speaking, and this is not medical advice, but flat-footed people, like it's more important for them to have like good arch support. Normal arches or high arches, for them, they can afford to have like kind of flatter shoes. Whereas if you have flat feet, typically, and see a podiatrist if you're wondering about this, typically it's more important for them to have arch support, right? Yeah. So basically, a good test for it is to stand on like get your foot wet and then stand on a brown paper bag. And if you do that, if you just see like the full outline of your foot like perfectly, then you have like flat feet. If on the other hand you can see the heel, but like in the ball of the foot and the toes, but there's like, you know, just like a line between the two or nothing at all, then you have like higher arches, right? That's the brown paper bag test is quite popular. If you need really good arch support, you can talk to the company and ask them what the arch support is like. I think White's is really good. Parkhurst is another company. They give you the option of buying extra arch support in there. But you can always just get like inserts, like ultra thin inserts that you can often fit into a boot, but not always. And that's something you kind of need to talk to the boot maker to determine like if the volume would allow for something like that. And they get these kind of questions a lot, so it's not a weird thing to reach out and ask about. Yeah, especially
if you've got plantar fasciitis and you need that arch support to help pull those tendons up without having them over flexing or straining them. And you don't have the arch support in your boot, you can get like the insole, like you mentioned, to give you that extra arch support. So if you find a boot that's perfect in every way, but it doesn't have the arch support, you can usually figure out a way to make it work. So the last thing to consider is probably what people would think to begin with is the most important, which is the toe box and how much room you have in the toe box. But in all reality, it's probably the least important thing to consider, especially after considering all the things that we've already talked about. Because once you get to this point where you're looking at the toe box, you've pretty much covered the entire fit of the boot. Because, you know, especially with sneakers, you have that rule of thumb. It's literally a rule of thumb. A rule of thumb, yeah. That you should have a thumb's worth of room between the end of your longest toe and the end of the shoe. But in boots, you know, like a stiff mock toe or some of these other like ones that have like a steel toe, there's no way to actually feel that.
Like, first of all, I'm pretty sure that rule happened because when you were a little kid and your mum was buying you shoes and everything, she made sure there was that extra room so that you could grow into them a little bit, right? But otherwise, I think a lot of people also think that you want to make sure you have that room there because that gives you room to move around inside the shoe, which like naturally happens. But like, that might be the case with some sneakers. But when it comes to boots, like ironically, it's really the least important.
When you're using these for work or for hiking or anything that you're actually doing a lot of time in the boots, all the other factors are way more important than the extra room in the toe box.
Yeah, so the most important takeaway here is like don't size down to reduce room in the toe box. Like we touched on this earlier, but yeah, a lot of people will think it's the most important thing, and even if everything else feels good, if there's a lot of room at the end of the toe box, they'll want to size down. So don't do that. Toe boxes that are too small, they can like rub on the feet, give you calluses, they're really uncomfortable, and there's really no downside to having like a toe box that's kind of large, so long as the the heel, the width, and the arch and everything else was said are on point. So as long as all that stuff's on point, the toe box, it really doesn't matter as much as people think. Yeah, that's the end of the video, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
All right, cool. Well, thanks for watching. Thanks so much to Weston for letting me invade his workspace and do this video with me. Yeah. I've got a few more videos with Weston on my channel. Check them out as well. I've got a couple on his channel. Whatever you do, make sure you subscribe to both of us because we've got a lot more boot content coming up.
Toasty boy, you're in the way.
Is this a naked cat or what? Or is he like a hybrid?
Cats have 2 layers of fur, an outer shell layer and a down layer.
I love how you're rose anviling your cat. When you look at this cross section.
Yeah. Yank. Yeah, he loves people. I'm sorry.